Imsa heads to Watkins Glen for its third endurance race of the season. Could we see a new winner emerge this weekend? Balance of performance was a big talking point last round out at Detroit. How could that be a big factor in this weekend's race? And the 24 Hours of Le Mans just wrapped up with plenty of Imsa teams and drivers participating. Could we see a little bit of a Le Mans hangover affecting anyone? That and more as I take you through 7 storylines to follow in this year's Salem 6 Hours of the Glen. Now, without a doubt, the Salem 6 Hours of the Glen is a big June event for Imsa fans. But there's also a pretty darn big endurance race that just took place last weekend over in France. Yes, the 24 Hours of Le Mans is a race that sees plenty of both Imsa driver and Imsa team participation. Imsa was well represented in all 3 classes at Le Mans, but now the next big challenge for those teams is the quick turnaround to the 6 Hours of the Glen. You see, the 24 Hours of Le Mans wrapped up on Sunday, just after 10 a.m. Eastern Time. The first WeatherTech Championship session of the weekend at Watkins Glen kicks off just before 11:30 a.m. on Friday. That's just over 5 full days since the checkered flag flew in France. Now, all of the Imsa teams and drivers are professionals. This isn't the first time that they've had to deal with a quick turnaround from one race weekend to the next, but time changes, long travel days, and in general, a very busy month of June may begin to take a bit of a toll on the teams. And with the championship and 4 classes as competitive as they are, you have to be at your best all the time, and for that reason, I wouldn't be surprised if we see some of those Le Mans teams, those Le Mans drivers, off to a bit of a slow start this weekend in Watkins Glen. After kicking off the Imsa season with a 24-hour and a 12-hour race, Imsa's proceeded to have 3 sprint races in a row. The 6 Hours of the Glen will now represent the first endurance race on the Imsa calendar since March. And with it, there's a few things for us to keep in mind. For starters, many of the cars will feature a third driver in their lineup this weekend. 37 cars, in fact, will feature a third driver as it's a requirement for the LMP2 and GTD classes, and some GTP and GTD Pro entries will also take advantage of that and opt for the additional driver. It's not just the additional drivers on the grid this weekend, we're also going to see some additional entries. Endurance Cup only entries like the Lamborghini SC63, the Proton Competition Porsche 963, and the 83 Iron Dames Porsche. Well, I mean, we were expecting the Iron Dames Porsche, but unfortunately, due to an injury that Michelle Gadding sustained in pit stop practice at Le Mans, the 83 Iron Dames Porsche will not be on the grid this weekend at Watkins Glen. All the best to Michelle for a speedy recovery. Despite this last-minute withdrawal, though, the grid is still a very strong 55 entries. Yes, that's 55 entries around a 3.4-mile track, so when you put that all together, you know that traffic is going to be a huge factor in the race. And with it being an Endurance Cup round as well, that also means that Endurance Cup points are going to be in play. Awarded at various points during the 5 Endurance Cup races, it means that teams will prioritize strategy and running position at these intervals to maximize their points in the championship. And with Watkins Glen only being a 6-hour race, there's only 2 intervals where these endurance points are handed out, and that will be at the 3-hour mark and at race finish. In the Endurance Cup Championship, in GTP, it's the number 7 Porsche who leads by a pretty large 8-point margin. We don't usually see gaps this big early in the season, but with the domination that Porsche has shown, maybe it shouldn't be that surprising that we see a gap like this. In LMP2, though, it's a much different story, with a tie at the top of the standings between the 43 Inter Europol and the 22 United Autosport entries. In GTD Pro, Paul Miller Racing has done a great job to maximize points at Daytona and Sebring, as they sit first and second with 27 and 23 points each. While in GTD, it's the closest battle of them all right now, with the 70 Inception Racing Ferrari leading the way with 21 points, but the top 4 here are separated by just a single point. So it goes to say that with this shift to an Endurance Cup round, there are going to be plenty of small storylines to keep an eye on with that. In addition to these storylines that I'm following this weekend, I'm going to be giving out a bonus one to the S's newsletter subscribers. I'll be sending that out along with everything you need to know ahead of this weekend's race in Watkins Glen at the end of the week, so you can subscribe to that by clicking the first link in the show notes or by heading to offinthes's.com. With it being an Endurance Cup event, that also means the return of the LMP2s. Now, the LMP2s have a bit of an odd schedule, as they've actually been absent from IMSA's last 3 sprint races. The last race that they participated in was the 12 Hours of Sebring back in March, and when the green flag flies on Sunday at Watkins Glen, it will have been 99 days since these cars were on track. Now, with their return, it means that some of the closest battles and some of the closest racing on the grid can resume. Now, make no mistakes, the LMP2 class is one of the underrated classes on the IMSA grid. This Pro-Am class is usually not heavily featured on the broadcast and usually lives a bit in the shadows of their GTP class counterparts. But it always produces some fantastic racing, some fantastic battles with the next generation, really, of up-and-coming prototype drivers. There are a ton of storylines to follow just for this class, and really it starts with the championship standings. Here, the top 8 cars are separated by 100 points, with the number 74 Riley leading the way. And on top of that, you look back to the 24 Hours of Le Mans last weekend, and we have both of the LMP2 class winners here. The 43 Inter-Europol competition entry, they won the LMP2 class overall, and the 199 AO Racing Spike entry finished 3rd in the LMP2 class and at the top of the LMP2 Pro-Am classification. And then another interesting story that you have is the number 8 Tower Motorsports entry. After winning the season opening Rolex 24, they were later disqualified for failing post-race tech. Now, they rebounded in Sebring for a strong 2nd place finish, and they're going to be at Watkins Glen looking to continue to claw their way back to the top of the LMP2 standings. All of this just goes to say, don't sleep on the LMP2 class come Sunday, because they are sure to deliver some of the closest and best racing on the grid. Now, perhaps this is a bit bold for me to say, but could we say that the IMSA season to this point has been a little bit predictable? You see, in GTP, GTD Pro, and GTD, we see our 3 championship winners from last season leading the championship standings once again here in 2025. And on top of that, those 3 entries have all won multiple races this year. In GTP, you have the number 7 Porsche, who's picked up 3 wins. In GTD Pro, you have AO Racing, that's picked up a couple of GTD Pro wins to their name, as well as that GTD win in Long Beach. And the number 57 Windward Racing Mercedes has also picked up a couple of wins themselves. I think that Watkins Glen, we see that change, and we could see some surprise winners. Maybe perhaps surprise winners isn't the best way to put it, but let's say some 2025 breakout winners. In GTP, I think the number 10 Cadillac is one to watch here. We know that Cadillac have largely struggled to find their pace this year. And on the back of a great strategy call, they were leading late in Detroit, although ultimately settled for a 2nd place finish. Heading into the 6 Hours of the Glen, they're going to look to bring that momentum forward with them, carry that momentum from Detroit forward into a good showing at Watkins Glen. They're also going to be sporting a little bit of a bump to their BOP, especially with the power levels under 230 kilometers an hour. So watch out for the Cadillacs coming off of the exit of corners to be strong. But is, a little bit of momentum and a little bit of a BOP help enough to ensure victory? No, absolutely not. But I say keep an eye on Wayne Taylor Racing, and in particular the number 10, to try and pull out of some of their early season struggles. Another car that I think we could see with a breakthrough win this year is the number 9 Pfaff Motorsports Lamborghini. Like the 10, they struggled out of the gate. They got caught up in an accident at the Rolex 24. They had some mechanical issues in the very early going at Sebring that took them out of contention, but despite the struggles in those first 2 races, they bounced back for a nice 4th place finish at Laguna Seca. And then last time out at Detroit, they picked up their first podium of the year for Lamborghini with a 3rd place finish. Now, Watkins Glen has never been a great track for Pfaff. They've kind of struggled a little bit here, but they did pull off a 2nd place finish in their McLaren at Watkins Glen last year. They seem to be getting better and better, just improving with the more time that they have with their Lamborghini, and I think that we could see them as a breakout candidate here at the Glen. I feel like we've talked about this a lot, but could this finally be Inception Racing's time to shine? Previously, when they were racing with the McLaren, it seemed like only a matter of time before we saw them in victory lane. However, after a switch to Ferrari, it's definitely stalled out some of the solid pace that we came to expect from them. Now, that being said, they did manage a 4th place finish at the 12 Hours of Sebring, but largely the start of this year has been a struggle for them. Now, the team is one of 6 cars on the Watkins Glen grid that will be featuring a bronze driver, so they are going to largely be focused on making sure to beat their other Bronze Cup entry cars. But with the speed that we've seen from Frederick Schandorf and Ollie Milroy, I think that we could see this 70 Ferrari in contention at the end of this race. Keep an eye on that 70 Ferrari this weekend as a potential breakout winner. After a slow start to the 2019 season, Mazda broke out at Watkins Glen, and it sparked what was then called the Summer of Mazda. They finished 1-2 at Watkins Glen. They backed that up with a 1-2 finish at Canadian Tire Motorsport Park, and they finished the summer stretch off with a 1st and 3rd place finish at Road America. It was an incredible run for that Mazda DPI that pulled them right back into the championship fight. This year, there are 3 GTP manufacturers that are looking to have a strong summer of their own as they look to reel in the Porsches in the GTP Championship. BMW find themselves the closest of the bunch, with the 23 being 297 points back of the leading Porsche. Despite this though, BMW have shown great pace this weekend. Talked about how many poles they've gotten. They've shown solid race pace as well, but they just haven't been able to put it all together and end up on the top step of the podium. This is a team and manufacturer that won Watkins Glen 2 years ago. They won Indianapolis at the end of last year. So if they can keep that solid speed at those 2 tracks and find something at Road America where they've struggled a little bit, then we could certainly see them having a dominant summer of their own. Now, from BMW to Acura, this is a manufacturer that's already kind of kicked off their summer on a very good foot. We saw them take that win in Detroit, and now they're going to look to back that up at Watkins Glen. Now, the ARX-06 hasn't been particularly strong at the Glen, but it has been strong at the next event on the calendar, Road America. If Meyershank Racing can pull off the summer of Acura and have a dominant summer of their own, they'd certainly claw their way back into the championship, and the way that those final couple of races line up for them, they could be in a very strong position to fight for a championship. And then we have Cadillac. They've shown solid pace at Watkins Glen with back-to-back 2nd place finishes, but have definitely faded in general when the summer months roll around. This year, they've largely struggled to open the season, so perhaps a reversal of some of that summer pace will be in order for them. Regardless of that though, we're quickly approaching must-win territory for the Cadillacs. And given the experience of both Wayne Taylor Racing and Wheel in Action Express Racing and the years and the championships that they have in Imsa, if there's anyone that can pull themselves out of this rut, go on a dominant summer run, I think that the Cadillacs could be the ones to do it. Rain, thunderstorms, sweltering heat, you name it. The 6 Hours of the Glen has seen it all in recent years. Last year, the drama came with a massive downpour that eventually brought out a red flag and saw cars sliding off track and actually unable to even catch up to the safety car. In 2022, there was also a big storm that rolled through, a red flag that affected the race and ultimately impacted a lot of drive time for drivers and teams in the race. So what will this year's 6 Hours of the Glen bring? Well, it appears that the weather will once again be a big focus point. As an early look at the Racecast weather forecast shows potential rain on all 4 days of running, with temperatures getting warmer as the weekend goes on. Now, luckily for all the teams, they've had plenty of experience running in both the rainy and sunny conditions here in recent years, so they should know what to expect at this point. But considering the vast range in weather that we could be in for and some of the randomness that can bring with it, don't be surprised if someone maybe unexpected emerges on race day and finishes the top step of the podium. Before the last round out at Detroit, Imsa made some pretty significant changes to the BOP, especially for the GTP class. The changes came after a start to the season that saw BMW take the first 4 pole positions of the year, while Porsche dominated in the races, taking 4 wins in a row, including 3 1-2 finishes. It all came to a head after Laguna Seca, where it was only the Porsches and the BMWs in that GTP class that finished on the lead lap, and Imsa at this point decided to make some changes. The BOP changes for Detroit did a lot to bring the field closer together, and it saw Acura and Cadillac battling it out for the win late in the race. Watkins Glen, in my opinion, will be the first real test for this BOP though. With the Glen being much easier to pass at, we could see a completely different outcome than what we saw on the narrow streets of Detroit. Also, with the uncertainty of the weather, the uncertainty of some of this BOP, we could see a total mix-up of the running order come race day. There's just a lot of uncertainty heading into this year's 6 Hours of the Glen, and uncertainty usually creates some close, action-packed racing. Now, the 6 Hours of the Glen is looking to continue a really strong final stint that we saw play out in Detroit. There, a few weeks ago, the battle for the win came right down to the wire. To get caught up on everything that happened on the streets of Detroit, you can check out this video. Huge shout out to all the channel supporters. If you too want to support the show, you can head to patreon.com/offintheS's or click that join button below. Once again though, thanks for tuning in. I hope everyone has a great race weekend and doesn't go off in the S's.